Stop the episode. Hey, you got me now? Okay, cool. Hi, I'm Rands. I'm the host of the show if you've never seen it before. And if you've never seen it before, this episode is a doozy. We had some technical difficulties with the video on my end of the interview. We try not to let it affect the episode, but our guest, Jason Winter, comes through loud and clear. Go for it there. My end as well, the audio works fine. It's just the video is a little broken in parts, so I've had to replace it with a still screen. So when you see this, you'll know exactly why. If you prefer a more professional experience or a more clearer experience, check out the audio version of the podcast. I strongly recommend it for this particular episode. It's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, anywhere good podcasts are found. But that's about it from me. If you can persevere through some still frames of me and perfect video of Jason, go for it. I'll see you at the end. Thanks for sticking with it. Otherwise, I'm going to leave the rest of the show to my younger self, and I might catch you for a brief outro. All right, good luck. Hey guys, welcome to the Booster Pack. This is the show where we unwrap the stories and crack the mysteries of collectible game history. Today on the show, I could not be more excited because we have a long-time professional geek. He is a writer, he is a streamer, and he is a master of MMOs over at MMO.bomb.com. But however, like most of us, he started as a CCG player and fan. But he parlayed that fandom to being a community manager for one of the biggest CCG publishers in the 90s, before becoming a writer for magazines like these, and then becoming a playtester and eventually a designer of collectible games himself. Allow me to welcome one of our coolest guests, Jason Winter. Jason, how are you?
Boy, you make me sound so impressive. I should have you do my resume for me. You know, sometimes I look back and I'm amazed that it's been like 20-something years since I've been doing all this stuff.
I mean, time flies like that. I had to remind myself how quickly the passage of time is going. We lost a whole year last year, and it's hard to catch up. So I am super excited to have you on the show because you are one of the very few people, maybe except for a few Wizards of the Coast employees, who can say that you have been at least monitoring collectible games history since literally day one. Now, do you know why I say literally day one?
Why do you say literally day one?
Thanks for taking the setup bait there. Actually, I found in the bowels of the internet, there is a reference where Peter Atkinson, the creator of Magic, is actually talking about Magic's premiere at Origins, I believe, in 1993. You couldn't even buy it yet. He was just demoing the game, and you responded to that post. So saying that you were very excited to see what this new game would be. Do you remember posting that?
That vaguely sounds familiar. It was somewhere on Usenet, wasn't it?
Yeah, this is before the internet was the internet. This is just when it was all bulletin boards.
That does sound familiar now that I think of it. Now that you mentioned that, I think I remember doing that.
Yeah, so you literally were there almost day one, but pre-day one, before Magic even dropped. You said, hey, this sounds interesting. So you're definitely a forerunner of what's become after it.
I was bugging people making CCGs from day one, basically, yeah.
Well, I can't wait to hear about that. Let's talk about that. But before we do, let's jump back. Let's learn a little bit before your time, before 1993 and the revolution that was collectible games. So you started playing games, I assume, well before that, if you're on Usenet boards about games before then. Tell us a little bit about that little backstory. How did you start playing games? Like, were you an RPGer? Did you like board games, Monopoly guy, Axes and Allies? What's going on?
I mean, in general, my family did a lot of games, a lot of board games and so forth. Like I said, the well-known stuff, Monopoly, Life, that sort of thing. We played that, for as long as I can remember. Since I was at least like 4 or 5 years old, we were doing some stuff at least. And then maybe when I was about 8 or 9, the local community college. Actually, no. Before that, I guess my brother actually got into D&D. My older brother. So I was kind of introduced to it through that. And then my local community college did like a little D&D thing. They did something during the summer. They did like college for kids, they called it. Classes for various things. And one of the things they did once was run a D&D campaign. Had somebody running a D&D campaign for like 8 and 9-year-olds. It must have been incredible for that guy. Yeah. I remember it was called The Quest for the Staff of Osmir. That's what the name of the campaign was that we did for like 2 weeks or something.
You should have made a collectible card with that name.
Yeah, now that I think all these missed opportunities, you're gonna remind me of all this stuff. I'm gonna forget all of it. But yeah, I remember doing that when I was like 9 years old, I think. And I mean, from there, I met a friend of mine there, another kid in International Falls named Andy, and we played D&D for most of the time, like all the way through high school and whatever. And then when I graduated, after I graduated high school, I went to college and went to the gaming group there. That started in '91 and going to University of Minnesota Duluth. Played stuff there, played everything, D&D. Car Wars was another big thing I was into at the time. Played a lot of that. From the Steve Jackson connection, I got into GURPS as well, so played a lot of that stuff. And yeah, just gamed with just about everything back in the day.
So, okay, so you were playing games with this with an RPG group in college, and all of a sudden something changes. 1993 rolls along. There's Wizards of a Coast, probably a game that is obscure other than Talislanta and maybe some supplements somewhere. Posts about this Magic game to which you respond, so you're aware of it. What's your first impression of a collectible game the first time you see it? Did you hear about it first? After that, did you come across it in the wild? How was your first introduction of a collectible game?
That's actually interesting that you mentioned the other role playing stuff they did, because that was when I first learned about Wizards of the Coast. Because again, being a Car Wars fan, I'd gotten Auto Duel Quarterly, which was the Car Wars magazine by Steve Jackson Games, and that transitioned into Pyramid magazine. And in there, I remember reading them talking about Wizards of the Coast getting sued by some company or another because they were doing supplements for their game. Like this is in pre like, but this is like proto D20 days. Like they would do supplements for other companies' games, but the other companies didn't like that so much. So
Yeah, well, I think that inspired D20. I think that the fact that they got sued early on was why they let everybody do whatever they want back in the day.
yeah, I guess it was in charge then. Yeah, okay, that's a good point. I never thought of it that way, but yeah.
So okay, so Wizards of the Coast has a couple of games. They're a
Mhm.
small role playing company, and then all of a sudden they come out with this game Magic. Tell
Yeah.
me about your first experiences in real life, IRL, as the kids say.
So I read about that also in Pyramid. Read about Magic and the thing, and I saw the concept and I read about it there, and I was like, I don't know what I think of this because it's like gaming, but it's like sports cards. Got that collectible thing, which I kind of know about, but yeah, I don't know if I like it that much. So that was whatever, like June of '93 or so on. Whenever June, July was Origins, I guess. As it turned out, a guy that I found on internet message board when I was playing around stuff then, he lived in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, which was about 3 hours away from me. So in the summer of '93, he said, "Hey, I can come up and pick you up, and then we can drive to Gen Con," which was in Milwaukee at the time.
Wow,
So I was like, "Sure, we'll do that. That's fine." So we did that, and that was actually my first convention was Gen Con 1993.
wow. So that's a significant date.
Yeah, yeah. I came in third place in the Car Wars Racing Championship that year, which I had my picture. I had my picture in Pyramid.
Wow, I'm gonna have to get those.
I want to say it was Pyramid number three. I still have it upstairs. Again, I should have grabbed all my magazines and brought them down here and rifled through them as we're doing this. But what I remember about Gen Con '93, though, well, one Decipher thing, which we'll get to later when we talk about that. But I remember Wizards of the Coast being there, having this tiny 10 by 10 booth with a line stretching almost halfway across the convention center because everyone wanted to buy Magic.
Yeah, there was a rumble.
Yeah, so that was how I really became aware of it. That was when I knew, like, oh, this is a thing. People are really into this. Like, I'd heard a little bit of the stories and so forth, again on Usenet or whatever, but seeing that, I was like, holy crap, that is a big deal. But it wasn't until November that I got into it myself. I remember going home for Thanksgiving, and the little game store, like a bookstore, really, that had some games in it that I used to go to when I was living at home with my parents. I went there and I bought a deck of alpha and a deck of beta and a pack of alpha. That was all they had. That was the entire Magic that they had there. And boy, I wish I would have kept them sealed.
You have a down payment on a house there.
Yeah, not for one, maybe a couple $100 for that much. And I remember my alpha pack had a land in the rare slot, which I realized only later and was very.
No way, you got the fabled island rare, did you?
Yeah, I think that's what I got. Yeah, but I did have a dual land as one of the cards in my beta deck. So
Well, at least you didn't pay $25,000 for it.
no, 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 a dual land, not a Lotus. Good God, no. Although I did almost win a Lotus in the tournament once, but that's yeah, whatever.
Well, let's feel free. I just wanted to hear. Actually, my very next question is about: did you ever? So you pick it up. You're getting used to it. Did you start immediately looking online for people to play with? Like, who did you have to play with?
So again, I got those cards and I brought them back home with me. Like played around, tried to make like, a deck out of like, the 70 cards. I make two decks out of them so I could play against each other, play a little bit. I just kind of put them away until maybe about April or so of that year was when two of the guys in my gaming group in college came back from wherever they'd been for something, and they're like, oh, this Magic the Gathering, this is an awesome thing. And that got basically the role playing game ceased at that point in our group. We were basically just a Magic group for my next 2.5 years or whatever in college.
That's the TSR fear story.
Yeah, that was when I really got into playing it. So
Wow. So did you okay, so you just mentioned actually that you almost won a Lotus once. So I was going to ask, were you ever playing competitively at this point?
only in little tournaments and so forth. We just had a few of them in the stores or whatever in Duluth, Minnesota. Not like a huge Magic hotbed or anything like that. Although I did twice run a convention, a little like a kind of a larger tournament thing of my own, called WinterCon. Naturally,
I was going to say, was it during spring?
yeah, it was actually like in January, and I actually got like I want to say like 70 or 80 people for some of it. And this would have been like I think in '95 and '96. Because I remember having like a Star Trek and maybe a Star Wars tournament there at some point, but also some Magic stuff. So, but that's probably like the biggest tournament I was a part of in any way, probably because I never was that good. I've never been that good of a player.
That's an elite club that we're both a part of.
The Black Lotus thing will be after I went to Decipher and went to a convention in '96. It was a sealed deck tournament. Just briefly, it was a sealed deck tournament, and we went through 4 rounds, and I was undefeated. And I think it was best of 3 in each match. I think I was 2-0 in every match. We went to the 5th round. I won the first match. The prize was a Black Lotus. It was kind of dented. It was kind of banged up, but it was still a Black Lotus. I won the first match, and it was like 1:30 a.m. and I was exhausted. I lost the second match. I lost the third game. It was only me and this other guy. We were the only undefeated guys. I lost those two. Went to a runoff for like third or fourth place. I lost both of those. I was undefeated up until then, but then I just hit the wall and just lost everything. So
Yeah. Okay. So that was a pinnacle of your competitive success, though, coming runner up,
that was it right there. Yeah, after that it was all downhill.
inches away for what would probably be an $11,000 Black Lotus right now.
It was really beat up. They acknowledged it, that it was kind of beat. And granted, this was, and I think it was whiteboarded. I don't remember what it was, unlimited or whatever. But yeah, it would have been something, I'm sure.
Okay, so after Magic, then your career sort of diverges from Magic pretty quickly after that. What was the next big CCG after Magic that really caught your attention?
So after speaking of that '93 Gen Con, the other thing I did when I was there was I went to the booth of this company that was doing a Star Trek VCR game.
Okay,
You run the tape, and this Klingon yells orders at you from time to time and tells you to move your token or whatever around the board.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was made by Decipher. So I yeah, huh? Go figure. That was when I first learned of that company. So I played that game there, and then basically did pay no attention to them for like the next year or so until Gen Con '94, which is when I went there, and that's when they were showing off their Star Trek trading card game, sorry, Star Trek customizable card game. That is what it was called. It was not a collectible game. It was not a trading card game. It was a customizable card.
Marketing had stepped in by that stage.
Yeah, that was what I had to call it in any sort of official work or whatever. Customizable card game. I spent the almost entire Gen Con '94 at their booth playing their game. I think I might have demoed it a little bit just because I felt like it because I thought it was cool or whatever. They had an actor there who was dressed up in Klingon garb, and I, would bantered back and forth with him. Made a Klingon deck because I thought that was cool in the Federation. But yeah, that was like probably the first CCG after Magic that I really got into, certainly. So, but it didn't come out for like another like 4 or 5 months after that. So that was August, and I think November '94 was when it came out. So still playing Magic up to that point with my college group, but really looking forward to trying something new. Because even after like a year of solid Magic, I was getting a little bored with it. So
And then after that, like it was all Star Trek all the time. Magic didn't get a look in.
not I tried. I mean, I got a few people playing it around in my local group, but it was kind of difficult. But I remember I'd carry on conversations with the designers of the game. Tom Bronlick was handling one of the co-designers. He was handling the answer stuff. He was the answer man at decipher.com was the rather lengthy email there that was to communicate with him. So he answered rules questions and so forth that I had, and I looked through all the FAQs, and like I don't remember if I like tried to correct him on some things or not, because like this is a little ambiguous. How does this actually work? So I was like, because I've always been a stickler for detail. So which serves me well in my time as now as a writer and editor, and certainly served me as a rules guy, which I got to being later. So yeah, I got to talking a lot with him, and like probably more like 95 or so. Like after Star Trek had been out for a little while, and I was getting used to it and playing it as much as I could with other people. But yeah, definitely playing it there and communicating with Decipher personnel as much as I could because I graduated in '95. I graduated college in June of '95. So I was like, guess I need a job now. You don't suppose I could get hired by these if I show them smart enough, maybe they'll like me enough or something. Because at Gen Con '95, actually, I went back there again, and I actually did hang out at their booth again because the game was out, and I did help them run one of their tournaments. So that was when I really tried to get into it back then, and I remember for all the help I did over the weekend, they actually gave me a box of Unlimited.
You were one of the first. What are they? They called them rebel leaders or red leaders and all that sort of stuff eventually. But you were one of the first sort of D agents.
Rebel Leaders was Star Wars, Ambassadors was Star Trek.
Oh, of course, but yeah, but eventually they didn't have them really for Star Trek. I don't think.
No, not for well, Ambassadors, like I said, that was the equivalent for Star Trek.
Of course, yeah.
But that wasn't even yeah, they didn't that wasn't even a thing back then. I was just that guy who annoyed them at the convention a bunch, basically. And yeah, like I said, getting a box of Unlimited at the time for poor college student me was like, oh my god, this is like yeah, I know mine. If only I'd known at the time they made like 300 million Unlimited cards. I don't remember the print numbers, but they were ridiculous.
Yeah, they were a little overprinted. I think they put it early Magic well to shame there.
That's why all the anthologies exist, so they could move some of that product. Yeah,
Oh, for sure. Yeah, repack them and stuff.
yeah, for sure, definitely for sure. That's absolutely correct. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to that. I can't wait to hear some of these Decipher stories. Quickly, before we jump on to you getting involved professionally, in this earlier time, was your imagination, obviously, you said you wanted a job and stuff like that. Did your imagination ever wander to the point where you wanted to be a game designer at any point? Or was that just, was the game design industry or the game creation industry just an adjunct to the hobby that you played at that point?
I'd always fiddled around with a little bit of home rules and so forth, and modifying things a little bit in the games I'd played. But for some reason, like game design, like the full design of especially once you get to CCG, the full design of an expansion set, actually kind of intimidated me. Imagining all like 300 cards or whatever and having to make them work or whatever. I admit, I didn't feel like I didn't necessarily know that I was capable of that. So I was okay to just be kind of an ancillary guy and be sort of like I said, play tester, designing an occasional card here and there, maybe something like that. But I didn't really have aspirations at that time to really be a designer for the games.
Okay, well, we'll put the end of Act One of your career there, and we'll move into Act.
Yeah, bookmark that for later.
Yeah, exactly, because that's going to come up. So I would love to hear how young Jason talks to adult Jason about that exact opinion.
Adult Jason smacks young Jason around.
I think we all smack our younger selves around. Okay, so you do end up getting involved with Decipher. Like you said, you had a relationship building through your savvy online communications with designers and everything like that. The D answer men of the world, that is. So tell us about how you actually professionally got involved with them after college.
I don't remember exactly how I approached Tom at one point and said, "Hey, if you want me to do more, I can." It was around December, so I remember like November or December when I said that I proposed to him somehow that I'd be willing to come on if you wanted someone to do rules. I don't remember exactly how that went, but it did result in me getting an interview, flying out there in January of '96. And that was when I actually got to the office for the first time and got to meet a lot of the other people behind all sorts of things. Met Tom, met Raleigh Tesh, the other co-designer, Jerry Darcy, who was
What was that experience like walking into the offices of a place that you had, played the games from? Was it underwhelming? Was it overwhelming?
yeah, again being 22 at the time, although I was just a little short of my 23rd birthday. Yeah, it was a lot. It was pretty overwhelming to actually be there at gaming mecca, so to speak, as far as I was concerned. Yeah, I was definitely overly impressed, and they actually took me up to the third floor office with a nice view of the street to meet Warren Holland, and I was like, oh wow, cool. And I actually remember at the time someone saying like after saying that he was like I think maybe 43 or 44 or something like that, and I was like, wow, that's so old. And now I'm 47, and I'm like, well, yeah, okay. But yeah, no, that was a heck of a trip. That was really something. I was amazed to be there, and amazed. I was kind of amazed they were taking me seriously. It's like, really? But the fact that Jerry was only like a year older than me made me think I actually had a chance. So I felt pretty good. 'Cause he for a while took over the Answer Man, I think, from Tom, but only for a little while before I came on and would take on those responsibilities. And the other one thing I remember about the interview though was being there, and this was January, and it was like 70 degrees in Virginia, which coming from Minnesota was amazing. And there was some giant blizzard that weekend, so I actually stayed like an extra 2 days. I think I did like some proofing on cards or something while I was there. They put me to work doing something. So
Wow, they're just like, I can't get a flight, so they're like, here, take a look at these.
yeah, basically that was about it.
That's fantastic. Well, actually, I was going to ask you because you came on as D Answer Man. So I'm guessing a lot of people aren't going to remember what that was, but essentially that was like a net rep or a rules manager on that aforementioned Usenet where people would go almost like forums, pre-forums on this proto internet. And you would answer questions and reply to fans and give updates about what the rules were like and what sets were coming out and explain if there was conflicts with rules issues and stuff like that. So you got brought on to handle that. Obviously, I assume you're working remotely at this point.
No, no, this was I was in a month later after my January interview in February. They moved me out there, and I worked out of the office.
Fantastic.
Now, a few other people they had. Mark Tuttle and Bob Madison were two other like net reps for them. They did work remotely. I don't remember what Bob's issue was, but I know Mark was he was a radio DJ. And he didn't like his job in Columbus, and he didn't want to move. I think that was why he didn't go. He eventually did, and now he works for Daybreak Game Company. He's been in that for a long time. So
Wow. It's interesting to see those little seeds grow into full game industry work. Now you were okay, so you were this D answer man. What was it like? Obviously, and you're in the offices as well, so you're doing little odd jobs here and there. Do you have any memories from that early time? Anything weird or exciting you really got to do?
so first of all, I think I only did the D Answer Man name on like AOL. I think that was like, the only place that I actually had that. So once I moved in there, though, I became Q. So it was Q at Decipher.com, partially because I was supposed to be all knowing, and because Q as in like Q&A, question and answer, which is the one thing I prepared for on this interview because I'm actually wearing my staff shirt, which only I have, that shows that I am indeed Q.
Round of applause. That is fantastic.
So I'm the only person who has this. After I left the company, they retired that name and it went back to people using like whatever names there were. So
That's your sports jersey. Q is your letter.
this is my sports jersey. Yes. Also, I remember these shirts. We had these for Star Trek and Star Wars. I'm now remembering how incredibly warm they were. Even just sitting here right now, I'm starting to sweat. It's like pure cotton. It's like a knit weave. It's really warm, which was okay in the wintertime, but all conventions are in the summer. So you go into any convention, these were just awful. And I'm just sitting here and starting to sweat a bit, much less having to move around a convention, whatever. So yeah, these shirts were not the best.
Hustle product and play test and run from one end of the hall to the other and organize guests and everything like that.
Yeah, basically, yeah, they were not fun. But yeah, I can remember I started there on February 12th, 1996. Me and two other employees, Jonathan Quisenberry and Sandy Weibel, we all started on the same day. And I believe we were employees either 27, 28, 29, or 28, 29, 30 of Decipher. Before Star Trek, they had 12 employees. So this is only a little more than a year later.
Well, CCGs require a lot of people to print and get out.
Yeah, by the time I left 2 years later, I believe we were up around 80 employees. So we went from like 30 to 80 in 2 years. So yeah, it was pretty. Everything was going up huge in those days in the CCG world.
That's amazing. Well, in those brief moments of working and sort of liaisoning between fans and the show, which I mean, sorry, fans and the company, which I'm sure you did plenty of. Do you remember any specifically troubling issues? Like, I mean, Decipher famously had delays and stuff like that through the '90s. Do you remember having to juggle both sides of that for that?
Those were not fun to answer questions about. Yeah, the delays. It was as someone said, the Decipher's motto was the art of great games, but someone else said it was the art of late games. But yeah, that was something that now I look back on and I think of like how video gaming industry is always late with everything, and I'm like, yeah, that wasn't so much. Now, granted, it probably essentially killed Star Trek because of how long it took for stuff to get out. But I don't remember like I don't remember any like major controversies or anything regarding that. I do remember one guy we had though that it started off in like '94. Like Jerry had actually met him at a convention. He was a fan. He was into the gaming game, whatever. By the time I got there and I was answering his questions, this dude was toxic as all hell. He was what he hated was I don't remember the guy's name or anything, but he was with some. He supposedly was part of a charity or something, but they just like took the cards or something, and he was angry that we didn't make Star Trek to be just an expansion of Magic, basically. Like he submitted card ideas for like Jim Kirk as a white creature, and I was like, this guy was just off the rocker completely. He's the one that sticks out to me the most as being the worst fan that we ever had of the game.
Yeah, so he's there pitching red and black Klingons to you guys, and you're just like,
Yeah, basically, that's exactly what he's doing. Yeah,
it's CCGs, not Magic the Gatherings.
but no, there were good memories too. There were good memories too. I can remember one of my early times when I didn't mind it so much, working till about midnight, working on we're doing some play testing and some like just discussion of cards. I remember like about a dozen of us staying there late one night, or actually it was 2 nights in a row. This was actually for Star Wars, but I remember it being still that sort of thing. But yeah, I remember staying there like till midnight and getting like food delivered to us, which I thought was just the coolest thing ever. Again, I'm still 23. I'm right out of college. Not making okay money, but not great. And so like getting free food was the best thing ever back in those days. But yeah, I remember liking that. I was actually staying there, feeling valuable enough to be a part of the company that they wanted me there to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a special thing when they're like, "Hey, we'll feed you" and stuff like that. That's great. So okay, so you start in early 1996, and then from there you are helping out with Decipher and everything like that. Do you have any memories? Because I think the 1996 is just after Star Wars launches.
Right. December '95, I think, was when Star Wars launched.
Correct. So then throughout that year, Star Wars is growing and growing and growing. Did you end up going to the famous worlds for Star Wars that year, the very first one?
That is actually like the one big thing I didn't do. I did not actually do Star Wars Worlds. Everyone else did. Went to Vail, Colorado. It sounded like a nice trip and everything. I didn't mind it so much. I actually said that's fine because I wasn't really the Star Wars guy. I answered some Star Wars questions when there was like overflow or at conventions or whatever. I could run. I ran tournaments just fine. I knew the rules well enough for that. But I basically said someone's got to stay in the office and manage that stuff. I guess so. I guess it'll be me. So I did not actually go to the first Star Wars Worlds.
Right, right. Okay, cool. So Star Trek is out. You're playtesting for that and everything like that. Eventually, you start doing articles here and there for some of these magazines behind me here. Things like initially Inquest and then eventually SCRYE. How do you get involved with that?
They asked me to do it. Actually, they asked. I think Matt Mariani was our marketing director, and I think he came around one day and was like, "Hey, Inquest wants someone to write." Actually, for Star Trek, he probably went to me
Hmm.
directly, but for Star Wars, he would have gone around to the group in general and said, "Hey, who wants to write this?" And I did a few for those. But yeah, the Inquest one I did was a what do they call it? A
Basic training.
first like a yeah basic training. That's what it was called. Yeah,
Hmm.
and I think weirdly enough, because I'm stupid like this. Let me just see here. I think I still have my original file that I submitted because I am ridiculous about keeping my old.
I was gonna say you're one of the few people who have probably got their very first piece of professional writing preserved from that era. That's
Look,
amazing.
you saw the playtest cards I sent you. I keep this crap.
I love it. Now, speaking of playtesting cards, obviously you got involved with some playtesting. So you're doing playtesting for Decipher as well as doing everything else, as being a man of many trades. Talk to me about that. What was playtesting a game like Star Trek like?
You made up crap as you went, partially. That's about how it was. I mean, I mean, they'd have the cards. They'd have the stuff in the files, which I think was Quark was what they used back then, and
Yep.
of course for Star Trek, why not use Quark? Yeah, sure.
Yep. Makes sense.
Because we were entirely a Mac office.
Yep.
Warren Holland loved Macintosh, so we were entirely a Mac based office,
Hmm.
and they'd print them out and we'd cut all. That was the thing. It was so much manual labor just to get to the playtesting part because
Hmm.
we'd cut them out after we'd printed them out. And you've seen, like you saw the ones I showed you were like they were actually glued onto the cards.
Yep.
That's what
Yep.
we did early, and I don't remember at what point we just decided to stick them in card sleeves. Like we'd sleeve up the cards and sleeve up old cards and just stick the stuff in the sleeves. Didn't have to glue them.
That's
That made
amazing.
it a lot easier to swap things in and out during the actual testing.
That's so much smarter than stickering them, right? Like, and if for anybody watching, I will post those on. If you're watching on YouTube, I will post those in the comments below.
Yeah, well, it is better than than sticking them on, because the sticking you can't undo. Once it's stuck on a card, that's what that is. Whereas the thing in the sleeve, you can just take that in and out and swap it out for. Because sometimes you would do that during the either we'd like just manually edit the card, like, oh, this two needs to be a three. Hang on, let's scratch that on there instead. Or if it was a bigger change, we might actually print a new set of cards and we just be able to glue those or swap those in instead. Because you'd go through that over a weekend. It's usually like a whole weekend that we would do this whole thing. At least for the big play test, we fly people in.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, you just have like almost like a mini proto tournament for the set.
Yeah, so to speak. Although the rules were changing and everybody lost at some point. So weirdly enough, I feel like I remember. Although I actually can remember too the Star Trek one. Sometimes I would just like have an afternoon. I'd go to either Tom or Raleigh's house, like me and Jerry and maybe Bill Martinson, the other like co-developer there. We'd all just go to their house and spend an afternoon playing up stuff. I remember doing a lot of that, especially for the Q Continuum expansion.
Wow. So speaking of those playtesting years that you did for Star Trek, do you remember any like changes that you made or suggestions that you made to cards in that process that ended up seeing print?
Did they ever listen to me? Honestly, they probably were.
They should
Yeah,
have.
yeah. They probably were, but I don't remember any specific changes that were made. I mean, I made my comments, and although again, like you said, we'll get to this later. So yeah, but yeah, there was nothing like specific during the playtest process that I remember as being like a big deal. Mostly, I was also there to help with wording and so forth, could be in the rules guy and the like I said, the editor kind of guy. So that was
Mhm.
the stuff I did a lot of too.
Definitely the jack of all trades. So, one thing I do know that Star Trek stands out for that had fans on the edges of their seats throughout 96, which is the year you were working there and sort of liaisoning with fans, was they were afraid that they were not going to get a license adjustment with Paramount. So, they would have been almost forced to discontinue the game. Do you have any memories from that tense time when it was uncertain whether the Star Trek customizable car game would continue?
Yeah, I do recall. I think the big deal was that we had the three expansion sets that they had announced earlier, like even before I was there. It was going to be alternate universe, Q Continuum, Holodeck Adventures, and All Good Things. I guess four sets then. And All Good Things was supposed to be maybe a finishing set or something. But I don't really remember like the tension of that, like the wondering if we were going to renew the license or whatever. I honestly, I think there was more concern about like we said before about just whether the next step was going to come out at all, because Q took so long. We took so long to do that. Yeah, that's the only part I really recall as being like a controversy. If there was more about it, if people asked me about, you know, is it going to continue after that? After All Good Things or whatever, I just said, yeah, probably. That was probably all I said because I didn't.
So I was going to ask then, I guess, because, okay, as somebody who wasn't there at the moment, I wasn't there to experience that. I didn't come into collectible games until a few years later. I, reading back on it, there was news articles and magazine articles and Usenet posts and forum posts of a burgeoning internet that it was like fans were like, oh my God, this isn't going to happen. Our game is going to get taken away from us. Come on, Paramount. Come on, Decipher. Kiss and make up. And eventually, obviously, after things like Flea's Star Trek games ended, your game ended up your guys ended up getting the entire Star Trek property and got to play in the giant sandbox that is the entirety of the universe.
Yeah, although that was pretty much after my time for the most part, because the last
Hmm.
set I worked on was the Borg set, which I think was still just a next generation set.
Yeah, first
DS9 was
contact. Well,
after I left,
first
that I
contact, I
remember.
guess.
So what's that?
Was that first contact?
First Contact. That's what it was. Yeah, it was the First Contact set. Yeah, that was the one. That was the next year's set because that took that long to get out.
All
But
right.
yeah, that was the last one I worked on there. So I wasn't even like around when DS9 came out or the Voyager or anything like that. I still played it, still kept up with the guys, and still went in for some play testing, but was not a member of the company at the time.
So if I was writing a novel about your career right now, I would end this chapter with the sentence: first contact was your last contact, and then you'd turn the page. So let's turn that page. You ended up working for SCRYE at that point. You had been writing these articles for a long while. You ended up writing, you were doing articles just as a contributing writer, and then became further up the chain, eventually becoming an associate editor. Um, what do you remember from those times? What CCG things do you remember? What exciting things did you get to experience, or what news or gossip do you remember?
Well, one thing I'll say about my leaving Decipher though was part of the reason I left is 'cause I couldn't understand the Borg. I didn't understand the mechanics. I literally could never grasp it, even through all the play testing and everything we did. I was like, "Well, I can't be the rules guy if I can't figure this stuff out." So, and
Wow.
it was starting to get. I know I was starting to get a little disillusioned with everything in general. So,
Yep. That's understandable.
yeah.
That's understandable. Well, obviously, we'll talk about it
So
later. But you obviously
sure.
kept contact. You did some play testing with them afterwards and everything like that. So it was an
Yeah,
amicable
and I
exit.
still hung out with. Yeah, I still hung out with the guys and everything, and did play testing and did all that stuff. So
That's
we can get into the
amazing.
stuff I did with them out of the office later. But yeah, for Scry, like I said, it was kind of the same thing. It was like I had written stuff for them as Decipher, which I didn't get paid for because I was working as Decipher at the time,
Hmm.
or working for the company. And then I guess around, I still kept up. I think I might have done a couple freelance articles for Trekker Wars, like after I left, just to make a little bit of money because you have to. And then around the middle part of '99, or no, was it? Yeah, '99. Wait, when did Pokemon come out?
Yep.
Pokemon came out
April
2000, right?
99, January 99, April 99, etc.
Oh, really? Okay, so that was the one that became a thing. All right, so
Hmm.
yeah, that was when Joanne White, who was the editor and owner of Scry at the time,
JM, yep.
asked me if I would like to become an associate editor to help deal with all the Pokemon crap they were having to do, basically.
A rising tide raises all boats, they say.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that was when I got on board with that, and like I said, around mid '99, and started handling all that stuff. Uh,
So,
I, I I then took over their like answer system for their email for doing all that, and
yep.
editing articles, and also contacting the different writers for other articles as well. I think I started just doing the Magic writers, Magic and like maybe Trek and Wars, and then I eventually started handling all of them after a little while.
Right, right. And then you grew into associate editor and stuff like that. Do you remember any cool bonuses or perks that you got when you were working for Scry, or inside games, or like promos, or anything interesting that came into the offices?
So remember when I was so overjoyed to get a box of white bordered Star Trek in
I do.
'95? Yeah, well, the company sent us all sorts of crap. We had cards and boxes and everything, and I was like, "Yeah, okay, whatever. Oh, another box of this stuff. Yeah, whatever. Toss it on the pile." It
Yeah.
actually was literally when I actually started. So I worked from home until about '01.
Hmm.
Actually, they actually wanted to bring me on full time to move up there in '01,
Mm.
and I didn't want to. I don't remember what the reason was exactly. But I
Up there
remember
is
actually,
in
like, I didn't want to move to Wisconsin. I think was something part of
Wisconsin,
it or
right?
something. I don't know. I don't remember what the deal was. Yeah. Well, that was after Krause Publications bought it. They bought it around maybe a year in, like around mid 2000 or so. Like after a
Hmm.
year, they bought it from Joanne White, and then um, where was I?
You
Told
were
her,
just you didn't want to work from
yeah,
home.
I didn't want to work there
Hmm.
because I didn't want to move to Wisconsin. And I remember actually calling Mark Williams, the publisher there,
Hmm.
telling him that, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. I think I'll just stay here and be a freelancer. I called him on September 10th, 2001.
Hmm.
I remember that because something happened the next day.
That's it's significant. Everything in that circle of those couple of days is significant to
Yeah.
everyone, I think.
Yeah. So at that point, I was kind of regretting that I hadn't offered to join in, but they picked up James Mishler, who was someone who had been working for them, who had worked for, I don't remember where he worked beforehand. He went for WizKids afterwards. So he went
Hmm.
there after. But then he actually, or yeah, because he left like about 9 months later in
Hmm.
mid 2002 to go
Hmm.
work for WizKids. That was his deal.
Hmm.
So then I actually, how did it go? I think I might have actually called Mark. I might have called Mark on September 10th to tell him I might still be interested at some point. I don't remember how it went exactly. But after James left, they called me and said, "Okay, do you want to come back now?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. I'm low on money, so sure, take me. I'll do whatever."
Yep. It
So
was
yeah,
a
then I was willing to do basically whatever I wanted, whatever they wanted me. I'd move up there and do whatever. So
Okay, cool. So you're writing articles about all these games that are coming out, and obviously Pokemon, as you said, you got brought on just to deal with Pokemon. But little did anybody know at that time, Pokemon would inspire an entire new demographic for collectible games. So previously, collectible games were sort of late teens, college student things. All of a sudden, everything that was aimed at kids became a collectible card game. So, do you remember anything about that time? Anything craziness? Do you remember? Do you remember thinking that Pokemon was just a fad that was going to go away?
first, I have two memories I can think of early. Like I remember a radio show that I used to listen to when I was driving into work at Decipher.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember them talking. This was like probably 96, 97,
Yep.
and them talking about this pocket monsters thing being
Mm-hmm.
a thing in Japan or whatever. So I remember, and that was the first time I heard about anything regarding that. But the bigger news is, again in '97, a couple of our people from Decipher went to Japan. It was
Okay.
actually our chief counsel, Steve Stanley,
Of
and
course.
our primary Star Wars, basically the Star Wars answer guy, Tom Lischke. They went to Japan.
Because Star Wars ended up getting a huge release in Japan.
Yeah, they did. It did. I remember us flying in like the Japanese champion, the regional champion for the tournament. I was there for the tournament in '97. The World's in '97. I remember him having a translator.
Mm-hmm.
But when they were there, they came back and wrote an article on our website.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember them saying that they discovered this pocket monsters thing that was a big deal,
Mm-hmm.
but it's aimed at kids, so it wouldn't be very successful in the United States.
Little did we know.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if Decipher could have actually gotten that. So yeah, that was an interesting thing. I still remember.
In reference to Decipher, though, I did read somewhere that somebody thought that Decipher might have turned it down. That doesn't sound right, does it?
But it is possible that we turned it down because it's for kids. It won't be successful in the U.S.
Yeah, yeah. I read somewhere that was definitely it. I don't know if that would be true because the creators used Magic as such a template for the energy cards and all that sort of stuff initially. But it would be so fascinating if that was the case. If somebody like Warren Holland said, no, this wouldn't be successful here.
Yeah, I don't know who had the final say on that. If it was Warren or Steve or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Yeah.
Fascinating. Wow. The history that could have been. Decipher's Pokemon. Okay, so you're working for SCRYE. It's an amazing time. Obviously, card games are booming left, right, and center. You've got Dragon Ball, you've got Pokemon, you've got Digimon, you've got everything. Monster Rancher, Metabots, whatever. Everything is.
When I came on in 2002, Yu-Gi-Oh was on every cover at that point. That was when that was exploding.
Yep. That was definitely the next big thing. I remember everyone being a little bit suspicious of it, going, "Is this really the next big thing?" So many have tried, and then eventually it has become one of the big three, as they say.
Is it still just 3, or do we include something else in there these days?
It looks like it could be getting close, but I think everybody's getting a little ahead of themselves. Let's give it another 6 months.
Sure. Sure.
I can't wait to see. I would love to say that this industry is more than this category is more than 3 games. So fingers crossed. We might talk about that at the end. Okay, so let's move through here. So ultimately, you're working for SCRYE. You're having a great time. And then all of a sudden, I believe the next big thing is you end up going off to sort of create your own collectible game, or at least design for a collectible game at that point.
This is when your research went a little off the rails, but okay, I'll clear it up exactly.
Please
So
do.
in late 2004, I actually left SCRYE,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, again, it was just sort of like with Decipher. First of all, I'm stupid for leaving jobs. That's something I've done a few times, and I hate that I've done it.
Yep.
But yeah, I just didn't want to be there anymore for whatever reason.
Yep.
So I left there in December. In March, I went to a Gamma Trade Show
Mm-hmm.
and met up with some of the guys who were working on the Fullmetal Alchemist Trading Card Game.
Okay.
A couple of them, one of them, Trevor McGregor. If you're familiar with him from the account and whatever, he was a volunteer for Decipher. He'd done a lot of stuff for them there,
Mm-hmm.
and he was working for them now.
Yep.
So I talked to him, and he got to know me a little bit more there. And I said, hey, I'm kind of looking for a job. I wouldn't mind getting back into being like a community manager kind of thing for a CCG. And
Mm-hmm.
they were getting ready with Fullmetal Alchemist, so that was how I got to meet them. And that was in March. In May, they flew me out for an interview,
Mm-hmm.
and actually was it May? I started in May. I think it might late April, early May, whatever it was. But like 3 weeks, it was. I remember it was 3 weeks between them calling me and saying I'm hired and me actually living down there, moving to Charlotte. So
Mm-hmm.
that was how that went. But no, I wasn't doing my own design in the meantime. I was still doing some stuff for SCRYE, still writing for them. That was probably about all I was doing at the time. Although I did do one article for I think it was in that time frame. I did one article for the official Babylon 5 magazine. Maybe
Right.
that was I think in the post Decipher pre SCRYE era.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that was when B5 CCG would have been a big deal.
Yeah, it was starting to come up as being a really significant multiplayer CCG.
Yeah, and my cool story about that is that I did an article in there, and I got credited in the credits, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And alphabetically, J. Michael Straczynski had also written in that issue, so his name was right next to mine. So when I actually met him at a Gen Con, I asked him to sign my copy of that magazine. I said, "Yeah, sign your name right next to mine there. Yours and mine right there."
That's
He thought that was
fantastic.
kind of cool. So that was the neat thing.
That's awesome. Okay, so this new, I think they were a new company at the time. This new company, Joyride, is starting to put out this. They've gotten this license from Japan on this burgeoning anime that was called Fullmetal Alchemist. That's now iconic. Um, so they've got this card game. You're coming on board to start designing for it. What did they have when you came on board?
So if I recall the history of the company correctly, Press Pass Inc. was a card company based in Charlotte, mostly specializing in NASCAR cards, because that was Charlotte is the home of NASCAR. I think they got bought up by Joyride Entertainment and became a division of Joyride. So I was technically working for Joyride, and maybe about a year and a half later, they broke free again and became just Press Pass. So that was like the difference between all of those. So, but for the time working for Joyride, making Full Metal Alchemist, uh, like I said, at this point, it did feel kind of like it was old hat. Like, oh, I'm going to go to a company and become their community guy and handle the rules. No problem, I can do that. I wasn't nearly as like nervous as I was about like maybe going to Decipher. It was like you say, it's older Jason now, so he's able to handle this sort of thing. And at that point, I'd lived in Minnesota, moved to moved to Virginia, moved to Wisconsin. So now I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. Charlotte, North Carolina, that's fine. The guy in charge of our company, Bob Bovey, he actually joked to me. He was like, "Yeah, why'd you take so long to get here?" Because I said it had only been 3 weeks, and we hired you 3 weeks ago, and you took 3 weeks to get here. Why'd you take so long? So he gave me crap for that. But yeah, at that point, I was kind of like an old hand for the whole moving across the country sort of thing. Uh, but yeah, I mean, it was basically the same stuff as Decipher, just managing the rules, doing the community stuff, and helping with playtest and all that.
At some point, you start designing for the game itself. You start, doing that thing that young Jason was so intimidated by, creating expansion sets. Do you want to talk about how that went?
So around I think the fourth expansion of Full Metal Alchemist, I asked our designer Ian Ryan. I was saying, maybe I'll take it. Maybe I'll try a little something.
Hmm.
Maybe I'll try like this because expansion set was like maybe 150 cards or whatever. I was like, can I try doing a little set of something like maybe like 20 or 30 cards just to try
Hmm.
it a little bit?
Yep.
He was like, why don't you go ahead and design the whole set? I was
Hey,
like,
Dad, will you teach me how to drive? Here's the key, son. Off you go.
okay, I can try that. So if there's anything I was always good at, it was spreadsheets. So I like just made a spreadsheet of all the stuff I thought I would need and
Yep.
name and stats and abilities and so forth. So I was
What
like,
they'd call a
okay, I guess
design skeleton now.
I'll just do all of this. And that was whatever the set that was after Heroes Passing. Heroes Passing was like our second base set.
Yeah.
This was the set that was
Wasn't artificial human, was it? That might have been.
Artificial Human was added. The first one after the no,
That could have been earlier.
that was the second actual set, I
Yeah,
think.
I think that could have been
This
earlier.
was a set that maybe it wasn't. I don't remember. I've tried to go back. I actually read like a rules document for Full Metal Alchemist from a while back, and I couldn't decipher it. It's decipher.
That pun, yeah.
I couldn't understand it
Actually,
basically.
let's use this as a thread for a question that I have. So, the interesting thing about Full Metal Alchemist and its rules, it plays heavily into characters at locations, which, as I'm sure you know, both Decipher games sort of really bled into that sort of idea.
All three, if you include Jedi Knights.
Oh yeah, especially if you include three. Yeah, exactly. Those three all bleed into that sort of same characters on determinate location cards battling it out. For somebody who may not be familiar with them, if they've ever played Smash Up, a little bit of a similar sort of thing. Do you think that there was any direct influence there? Because I mean, there has been a lot of speculation that because people like yourself were involved from such an early stage, that Decipher's early games heavily influenced it.
Our lead designer for Full Metal Alchemist was Ian Ryan, and he actually came over from making Mech Warrior. No, not Warhammer 40k.
Okay.
He worked for the guys who made 40k.
Mm-hmm.
I think they might have had locations as well in that. I got one playtest once of that once at a convention, so I don't really know for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that he was a big Decipher gamer though, so I don't know how much he was influenced by that or if Trevor talked him into that. So
Yeah.
I arrived there just as they were getting ready to launch. So I
Yeah.
got there just as they were having everything kind of finalized for the first set. So I didn't
Mm-hmm.
really have any input on the base game.
Yep.
Although one thing I did notice when I first played, I was like, we shouldn't have maybe locations where people only fight in strength. Because then if you're a deck based in wits and not strength, you're not going to want to play there. And
Yeah,
Ian was like,
yeah.
no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. People will interact. And I'm like, no, they really won't. And no, they really didn't.
Well, that was such a big
So I
element of
kind of
that
wish he
game.
had a little more Decipher. I
Yeah,
wish he
definitely.
had a little more Decipher influence at the time. He would have known about force draining.
Yeah, exactly. I love this. I love this. This is exactly where I want this show to go. Asking those questions about what influenced what. That's fantastic. Okay, so you're
By the way,
working.
Mark Tuttle, who I mentioned a while back, he invented force draining. That's his claim to fame. Just so
Really? I mean, I can't wait to ask him about that if we ever get a chance to talk to him. Okay, so you're designing this for you're designing Fullmetal Alchemist. Were you familiar with the property before you got the job?
not at all. Actually, at GTS at Gamma Trade Show in March, Ed Bolmy, our product manager, had given me
Mhm.
the first two DVDs, first two that Funimation had made, the 8 episodes. In fact, they're right over here, actually. Right,
The original ones?
actually, maybe he gave me three. I don't know. But I think these are the two he gave me. I think maybe I picked up the third, like in the office or something later.
Right.
But I was completely unfamiliar with the show at the time, so I took these home and I watched them. I was like, "Oh, these are pretty cool, actually."
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was my introduction to Fullmetal Alchemist. Now, I remember actually in my first couple of weeks, uh, we had digital copies of the English dubs through
Mm-hmm.
the first season, which was like episode 26. But then they hadn't dubbed the second season yet. We only had Japanese with subtitles for that, so I had to watch that. I'd
Mm-hmm.
watch like an episode or two over lunch, and they'd always be like, "Oh, has Jason seen the episode where this happens yet?" And I was like, "What happens? Oh no, I haven't seen that yet." And I'd watch it and be like, "Holy crap, guys! I can't believe this happened." Like, yeah,
Scribbling it on a
yeah.
notepad.
Poor Rip Mace Hughes. Oh boy.
Anyway, so I want to ask. Okay, so you're designing these sets. You did one set. How many sets did you end up doing for Full Metal Alchemist?
The rest of them, I think it was like 3 or 4 after
Mm-hmm.
Heroes passing.
Yep.
But yeah, that was about it. And still doing all my like community management stuff. Still doing the stuff on the forums. I remember one of my favorite things was I wrote around Christmas time. I wrote a poem based on the night before Christmas, and it was like
For the Full Metal Alchemist fans, like
yeah,
the
for Full Metal
website
Alchemist. It was the night
tcg.com.
before Christmas, and all through the shop, not a creature was stirring, not even Winry with her mop or something like that. I don't remember how.
I'm sure there's some hardcore fans out there who will remember that
I actually
solidly.
wanted that. I think I might have been able to find on the Internet Archive or whatever that one site is.
Yeah.
It does have I've looked at old FMA pages on there,
Yeah.
FMATCG.com pages.
So
So that could probably still be found.
Wow. So speaking of that, like when you think back on that time, when you think back about creating this game that many people still love, like you said, you're part of Facebook groups where people still play it, and it was such a big property at the time. There is certainly a demographic that loved that game. What were some of the things that you remember most fondly from managing that community and creating that game?
For Fullmetal Alchemist, we had a shop in Rochester, New York.
Yep.
Um, can't remember what it's called. The guy who ran it was named Luke.
Mm-hmm.
But those guys were the absolutely most insane players we had. Insane in a good way, not like the guy in Star Trek, not like the white Kirk guy.
Not 3 mana for a wharf
No,
card.
they ordered some of the individual players in there ordered FMA by the case,
Yep.
like the 24 box case.
Wow.
So those guys were just nuts.
That was sort of a
But
hub.
I got to go to their shop once for a little PR thing we did.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to meet them, got to meet a lot of them, and that was just a lot of fun meeting those guys, seeing how passionate they were,
Mm-hmm.
playing against them, losing to them most of the. Actually, not. I beat some of them. Some of them were really good players though. But yeah, I did lose to a good number of them. And
Young competitive
I
Jason
love
comes out.
the staff cards we had too. I don't know if you're aware of those. We all had our own personal like staff cards based on a character from the show. I was Alphonse. I
Really?
got to be Alphonse because I came on. See, everyone else had a thing that was kind of related to their personality.
Yep.
Like obviously, our manager was our brand manager was Edward Bolmy, so he got Edward, of
Yep.
course.
Of course.
Trevor had a 6-year-old daughter, so he got to be Mace Hughes, of course.
Oh, Trevor.
Ian, because there had been so much talk of him being an award-winning designer for the work he'd done on the 40K,
Mm-hmm.
because so we like made fun of how much he boasted. So he got to be Alex Lewis Armstrong.
Yep.
Armstrong.
Yeah.
Bob Bovey being the kind of gruff guy in charge of everything was Roy
Yeah.
Mustang.
Of course.
I got to be Alphonse because they printed the cards for my position before I was hired.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't know who was going to have the job. So they wanted to kind of, someone in a suit of armor. You couldn't tell who it was. So that
Oh,
was why I got to
right,
be
right, right.
Alphonse. So
That's fantastic. Now,
but yeah, going
just
around and seeing people like that and being able to hand out those cards and have those be special.
yep.
I still got like a stack of 100 of them sitting around, whatever. So
You know what? When this airs, you're going to get 40, 50, 70 emails about those cards, somebody wanting to buy them all. So, you know what? I only want to jump off FMA here a little bit, just because you mentioned being a certain represented by a certain card. Now, you're no stranger to being represented by a certain card. If I'm not mistaken, you've appeared on more than one card for Decipher Games. Do you want to talk about that just briefly?
yeah. I've only sort of appeared. My name has appeared on one.
Yep. So how has that appeared?
That's the Chief Retwin card for Star Wars. That was in the Dagobah expansion.
Okay.
Which Retwin, of course, is anagram of winter. We had a lot of anagram cards in those days, and that one's mine.
Yep.
He's an Imperial spy. I think he has a spy keyword. He's basically, if you're watching Empire Strikes Back, after the Millennium Falcon zooms away at the very end, and Vader just kind of stands there and then starts walking away.
Yep.
Retwin is like visible for like a frame or two as he walks off the bridge of the Executor.
So every time you watch Empire Strikes Back now, you are bated breath in that scene going, am I coming up? Am I coming up? There I am.
Yeah, I'm not on any other Star Wars cards. I do have a Young Jedi and a Wars card that represent me, though. Okay, Young Jedi. So, as I was saying, I gamed a lot with the other people who were at Decipher at the time. We still did a lot of stuff, a lot of fun. And at one point, we did a Star Wars RPG campaign after a D20 came out. That was around 2001 or so.
Yep.
And I had my character was the class was noble, but I made him out to be kind of a musician. And his name was Corix Ven. And that wound up being a Bith musician card in Young Jedi, in one of the Young Jedi sets.
That's so cool.
Although I'm mad at them for spelling it wrong. It was 2 R's in Corix and only 1 in the actual card name.
That's another one that'll appear in the comments below for those watching on YouTube, because I've got to show people that.
I don't have a supply of those, though. I think I might have 1. That's about it.
Don't email them about that. Although if you want Fullmetal Alchemist promos,
hit
that send button.
Whatever. Sure.
Okay, well, so that's fascinating. I was going to say let's jump back to Fullmetal Alchemist, because you're doing work for Fullmetal Alchemist. You know, you've had an impact on the community. People are really actually seeing your design work come to fruition. Now, why the game seems to be pretty popular. Like you said, it's got some hubs that are really, really investing in the game and has got some really strong play. Do you remember any reasons why the game sort of started to grind to a halt?
So that store I talked about in Rochester, they were probably accounting for that store alone was probably accounting for a not insignificant percentage of our sales.
Really?
Yeah, that one store, because I remember saying, I don't remember when this came up, but at some point we talked about I don't want to say fad, but a sensation like that. We thought the lifespan on it was like 18 months.
Okay.
And after about 18 months, after that anime had been on TV and everything, and after it had gotten run through everything, it's not that big in the public consciousness anymore.
Yep.
So it started to become less of a big deal, and just kind of started to peter out. So we started looking for other things to do.
Okay. And
just like the natural life cycle of a CCG based on basically a 50 episode anime. So
yeah. That's
if you
true.
look at a lot of the other games around there of that time that were based off similar animes, they're not, those card games aren't really around either so much.
No, it would have been odd if pictures of your staff ended up showing up on Fullmetal Alchemist cards.
Yeah.
So, okay, Fullmetal Alchemist starts to peter out. Did you guys have any design work in the pipeline before the sort of the death nail goes into the coffin, so to speak?
Yeah, so the movie, the Fullmetal Alchemist movie, Conqueror of Shambhala, that came out around 2005, I think. In fact, it was, 2007, 5, 7, whatever. It was when I actually remember getting my copy when I went to the Rochester store. The Luke gave me a copy, just right. Oh no, he gave me Advent Children, Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. But anyway,
All right.
going off on a tangent now. Oh yeah, Conquer Shambhala came out, and that was something we were going to make a set of.
Yeah.
And we actually did design the whole set. We did all the playtesting, did all that, had new mechanics for the new factions or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
For which I was specifically told by Bob, we do not put Adolf Hitler in our set. Do not. I know he's in the show, in the movie. Do not put him in the set.
Yeah, you don't want people cracking packs with that card.
Yeah, it was enough to get Rudolf Hess in there. We kind of had to put him in because he was such a central character to the movie. But that was about as far as we could go with that. But yeah, we designed all that and actually made 18, I think a set of 18 promo cards.
Yep.
That we were going to put in the that we actually inserted into previous expansions. Previous, like the last expansion before that. So I think some of those actually got out, but that's about it. That we never got to do any more than that. Yep. One thing I will say though is I'm always a little ticked off. We had a new keyword that I came up with called Spite.
Yeah.
Which was an effect that triggered when a character died, and I totally blame Hearthstone for stealing that and making it into Death Rattle.
Oh right, it certainly became. Well, it was never published, right? Obviously, it was something just very similar.
I think one of the promo cards had Spite on it.
Oh
and
wow!
We might have let loose what the reasoning, what the mechanics was for it, but
that's amazing.
I don't really blame Blizzard. Please, Blizzard fans, don't get mad at me. I like Hearthstone.
Don't at Jason. He's just hypothesizing.
I like to think that they stole it from me. That's my idea.
Absolutely. Well, okay, so that brings us to the end of Fullmetal Alchemist, but Press Pass, that wasn't their last CCG. That was yet to come. What follows after that? Do you want to tell us about the game that you're actually credited as co-designer for?
So when we knew Fullmetal Alchemist was running down, we looked into other opportunities at the time, and one of the ones we really pursued, one of the ones that I really championed and wanted us to get, was Heroes.
Oh, the Universal NBC series?
Yes, that was what I wanted us to get.
That would have made an amazing game.
Bob was against it. Yeah, it would have made him for an interesting game. Although, the writer's strike happening just after that, and that show also kind of having a very short shelf life.
Oh, yeah.
Might have meant that it wouldn't also have not done that great. So
Season
1 was amazing, but season 2 was kind of...
It was truncated.
Season 2 and after was kind of...
I think it was only like half the size or something because of the writer's strike.
That's exactly right. It was half the size because of that, yeah. So that would have been neat to be able to get that, but that didn't work out. And other people, Trevor in particular, I remember him being a real big champion of 24.
Okay.
The, Jack Bauer counter-terrorist show, which I had never seen.
Yep.
So that was again a case of me having to shotgun through seasons worth of episodes to try and catch up with that as I was designing the game.
Yep. And
I've still never seen season 6, despite designing cards for it. But yeah, that was what we did. That was the game we actually made. We made 24 and produced one set. We produced one set of that.
Yep.
And then we actually made the second set.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm trying to think. That didn't release, did it?
I don't think no. So you had Day 0 and then the actual full, like the premiere set or like a preview set, and then you had the full set. Yes, I think it was like 1.5 sets really worth.
Something like that. Yeah, Day 0 was like, I like that little mini set. Yeah, I remember that now.
Yeah.
God, you're making me remember all these little products we did that I completely forgotten about.
Well, you had, I was going to bring this up later, but you had other products in the pipeline like Special Ops and Crossfire and other sets that had been announced.
Crossfire, that I think was the name of the first set that we were working on, that we worked on.
Yep. And after the premiere set.
Did that really not come out? Because I swear I remember designing that. Because I know I left the company shortly after 24 was launched.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to remember if...
Well, it was just the premiere, I think, or the Day 0 and then the base set, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
but I could be misremembering.
Maybe you're right.
Anyhow, so you're designing this game, this game that unprecedentedly in a geek hobby fantasy sci-fi genre that dominates the collectible card game. You're going to make this game about a espionage agent. How does that pressure fall on your shoulders?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I tried to convince Trevor this was not a geek license.
I hope he watches this.
And Trevor told me, send me a link of your interview when you're done. So he's going to see this, and I'm going to tell him. 15 years later, I was right, Trevor.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you could stick it to him. So at the time, if I remember correctly, 24 was a huge show. It was up there with Heroes and everything else. So it was a huge property for 20th Century Fox. Did they at all inflict any sort of restrictions, or did you have any way that you needed to represent the characters in a certain way?
With any licensed property, you have to go through the licensee. That was same. That was for Star Trek, for Star Wars,
Of
for
course.
I imagine Fullmetal Alchemist. So we always had to go through an approval process.
Hmm.
Obviously, if we had to do it for like the basic sort of concept of the game, obviously pitch it and sign contracts and whatever. But we also had to send them all the individual cards, which
Hmm.
I should point out too for Full Metal Alchemist and for 24. I'm also writing all the cards. I'm doing all the proofing. That's all
Hmm.
my editor work, which I'll get
Yep.
to, which I'll later do for real. But that's all that I'm doing, having to make sure everything is right and making changes as needed. So we would submit cards to them.
Yep.
Hopefully, they would get back to us in a timely manner.
Yep.
I can remember actually. I think Lucasfilm was actually kind of bad about that early in the Star Wars days. I think that was kind of an issue at some point.
Yep.
But for the most part, it wasn't too bad. The only thing I think I can remember them, especially the 24 balking at,
Hmm.
was portraying Jack Bauer as a villain. Like we
Right.
had an idea for because there was counter terrorist and there was terrorist in 24,
Hmm.
like two colors basically, light
Yep.
side, dark side, however you want to
Factions.
put it.
Yep.
And of course, at some point, and as you've probably seen if you've seen any Star Trek or Star Wars cards, we play fast and loose with how we can get stuff around and make it. How can we have a dark side Luke or something like that? So
Yep.
and at various points in the show, Jack had to do bad things because the bad guys were blackmailing him or whatever. So we wanted to have an evil Jack Bauer, and I think they were not happy about that sort of concept.
Yep.
That's the only thing I can recall as being kind of an issue.
Right.
Although
Right.
I will also say too, and I don't want to get into this too much because I don't want to misrepresent him.
Hmm.
But one of the designers for Star Trek after I left was Evan Lawrence. He
Yes.
was my roommate for a while
Okay.
around that time, and I remember him coming home with some horror stories about getting actor approvals for various cards for stuff. So, but
Right. And what
I'll let
they
him tell that story if he ever gets on here.
I will. I'll certainly reach out and see if he wants to fill in that gap. Stay tuned, everyone. Okay, so final. So what happens? So 24 is launched, and you decide to leave before it gets canceled.
Yeah, because I was around like the summer, like shortly after Gen Con. I think I gave like my 2 weeks notice because I actually thought I had another opportunity with Scry, which actually didn't pan out, but
Yeah.
that's whatever. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, I could tell because Full Metal Alchemist wasn't going anywhere. I was not real happy with. Actually, I think we'd already announced. Yeah, Full Metal Alchemist had been. I remember writing the press release for that, saying Full Metal Alchemist was shutting down.
That's a sad thing to have to
20.
write.
Yeah, it is. It is. I think it's the only time I've ever had to write that too for a game because I wasn't around when the other games shut down.
Hmm.
But I mean, Decipher or uh,
Press pass.
Press Pass, I could
Yeah.
tell was not going in the greatest direction for that sort of thing.
Yep.
Like I could tell 24 didn't really have much of a future, so
Hmm.
I just said, I think I'm just going to go ahead and again be stupid and leave a job that's actually still paying me. But yeah,
But
that was a thing I
you can see
did.
the writing on the wall.
Yeah, I thought I could try looking somewhere else, but
Okay. Okay. Well, that's sort of the next thing. The next step for your career after that is you go work for Beckett, the card grading company, but in their media section. Do you have any stories about collectible games that you remember from that, or any interesting things insight that you have into their grading process or anything?
this was another way that I actually got into them because when doing conventions for Press Pass, I would talk to their people and we would get
Hmm.
their magazines and so forth. So like, and around this time, around like '07, '08, '09,
Hmm.
I started getting more into MMORPGs. I got into Lord of the
Yes.
Rings Online when that started out.
Yep.
That was in April of '07.
Hmm.
And I can also remember like the day after I left Press Pass, I just sat and played Lotro just all day long. I was like, hell, it's a Monday. I don't care.
Yep.
I'll deal with that. I'll deal with my actual responsibilities later.
Hmm.
So I did that for like '07, '08, '09. Played that. Played a few other games. Actually wrote some for ICV2,
Oh yeah.
if you
Yeah.
remember
Of
that
course.
site. So I did some writing for that as well for Milton.
Hmm.
And then around, I guess it was actually like the middle part of '08. I asked them if I could. I asked Beckett like, "Hey, you guys need someone to write Lotro articles for you?" Because I'm playing a ton of that.
Yeah.
They actually wound up getting me a lifetime sub from Turbine, so I could actually write articles for them.
Perks of the job.
Which I'd actually stopped playing a little bit. I actually had cut down,
Yep.
and then they got me that, and I was like, "Well, I guess I'm back in now."
Yep.
So much for cutting back.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, so I started writing for them.
Yeah.
Did that for a few months. Then they brought me on to be both like an editor, and they tried to make me into a sales guy. Like I tried to pitch ads to various companies, and especially for universities. We were trying to get, because all
Like,
video game design universities were like a thing that was really propping up around them.
now when you
We
say
wanted to
ads,
get
do you
ads
mean
from.
ads for card grading?
No, ads in the magazines for the for the Beckett Massive Online Gamer.
Oh, right, 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 right.
Yeah, because that was what I was mostly writing for at the time. At that point, I could tell I was kind of out of CCGs.
Mhm.
After leaving Beckett, I was sort of like, I think I'm probably done.
I
I
understand.
had I had a good run, but it's just not something that interests me anymore. I didn't even like playing a lot of stuff. I
Mhm.
hadn't played much. So yeah, I think at that point I decided I wanted to kind of try and shift into video games if I could.
Yep.
So that was kind of the strategy at the time.
And that's
So once I got to Beckett, once after they decided I was a terrible ad salesman, they decided I could just be editorial because they were not happy with the associate editor that they had for the MMO magazine.
Yep.
So they decided to replace her with me,
Mhm.
and that
Mhm.
was when I moved down to Dallas and went down there. And so again, now my path is Minnesota, Virginia, Wisconsin,
Yep.
North Carolina, Texas.
Yeah.
So I'm going to my fifth state now
Yeah.
to work for Beckett, mostly doing their video game magazines, but also contributing to their Magic the Gathering and Pokemon magazines.
Yep. So, so at that stage, you're doing magazine writing and stuff like that. Do you have any last memories of your exit from the CCG, the CCG world?
Well, I tried to exit, but as I said, once I went there, they had me working on the Magic and Pokemon. They actually didn't have a Magic magazine. They had a Magic magazine,
Mhm.
then they stopped making it for a while.
Mhm.
Then after I came back, see, in 2009 was when SCRYE actually went away, when they went out of business.
Right.
And I think they thought there was some great untapped market for CCG
For
magazines at the time.
magazines.
And I was like, guys, there's a reason SCRYE went out of business because nobody reads magazines anymore. Nobody's getting their price guide info from magazines anymore. It's all on the internet.
Mhm.
So, but they really wanted the Magic magazine to come back, and I guess they figured I was a guy to take over a lot of that stuff. So I
Yep.
actually got a lot of my old writers from SCRYE to contribute to it, and we went from there.
Okay, so your career with CCGs are wrapping up. Are you involved with collectible games at all anymore?
You mean now, as opposed to, or we're still talking like in the past, Dad?
Oh, no, no. In present day, do you keep an eye on what's going on in the industry, or do you have any perspectives on anything that's happening right now?
Not really. Not
Hmm.
not in terms of physical games. I still play, like I said, I play Hearthstone from time to time.
Yep.
I'm usually the go-to guy when we do MMO bomb stuff for CCGs. So
Yep.
I've sampled a few others here and there.
Hmm.
But in terms of the physical games, I've really just left it behind entirely.
Yep.
I just don't have any real desire to play Magic or any of the other stuff that I used to play. I think the last physical card game I probably played was probably when I was living. No, it couldn't have. No, I guess probably when I was with Press Pass. I probably haven't played anything
Really?
since then.
Well, you're not the only one to have moved on from that era. But at the moment, there is definitely a when I started the idea of being retrospective on the history of this, collectible games were in that situation where, other than the big three, there wasn't a lot of interest. And in recent months, even the last year or so, there has been a huge resurgence, not just in those early versions of those big three games, but in every single aspect of collectible games. New ones, like I don't know if you've heard about. There's a new game called Flesh and Blood that's doing crazy business. And there's a lot of new in renewed interest. It's some sort of speculative interest that hasn't existed since 1994, like in the early days of Fallen Empires and stuff like that. That we're seeing in the industry nowadays. Do you have any perspective on that, as somebody who has seen the ebb and flow of collectible games?
So here's the thing, though, is like, again, from working at Scry all the time that I was there, we'd get,
Mm-hmm.
obviously people are pitching new card games to us and whatnot and wanting us to check their things out.
Yep.
I also worked for, we also did Comics and Games Retailer, which was an industry magazine
Yep.
where we compiled numbers for sales numbers, mostly for comic books, but we also added the game section later on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd compile the numbers for there, which were partially made up, but whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd see, okay, Magic sold, the average store sold 30 boxes of Magic and maybe 15 boxes of this,
Yep.
and then 15 boxes of Pokemon and 12 boxes of Yu-Gi-Oh. And then, 2.5 boxes of what the next game was, L5R or something
Yep.
like that. It's like I've gotten a little jaded about saying this is the new sensation. This is a
Yep.
big thing. It's like, yeah, we have you as selling like zero point 0.7 boxes per store or something like that. So
Yeah.
it's like FMA. Like that one store might be doing really well,
Yep.
and there are going to be pockets of something everywhere.
Hmm.
But it's hard for me to get excited or to really think that something is a big deal on a widespread level. So
Right.
when I hear you
Right.
say that sort of thing, my speculate o meter just kind of pops up. So
I think there's a lot of people who are sort of side eyeing what's going on at the moment, saying, I think we're in a bubble right now. I think there's a bit of a surge due to people at home, people getting renewed interest, certain online influencers driving interest in a very unrealistic direction. So we'll just have to wait and see. Like I said, I'm not going to say one way or another, but I would love for collectible games to come roaring back as if, another 1994. But the problem with 1994s is they're usually followed by 1995s.
well, the 1995 was the good year. That was the
Oh,
year we
sorry,
had
yeah,
the
six, yeah.
40 releases. Yeah, because yeah, I remember we did 2 editions of the big SCRYE collectible card game book when I was there, and I remember
I can't reach it, but it's behind us there. Yep.
yeah, mine's upstairs. I definitely can't reach it.
Yep.
But yeah, that was a bit of work.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going
And
to
I don't
ask you
think it's the
about
sort of
that.
thing
That
we'd
was
ever want
something
to
we
do
glossed
again.
over at your time at Scry. Was there any specific stories you remember from putting that together?
So the first one was put together when I was still working from home when I was just an associate editor,
Yep.
and I remember I want to say it was like 400 sets, something like that. That was how many things that we had to write a little editorial intro to every one of them,
Yeah. I know what
and
that's
that was
like.
parceled out between my editorial director John Jackson Miller, who now writes for Marvel or something. I don't know what. No, he writes Star Trek
Disney.
books. I think that's what he does
Oh,
now. Yeah,
yeah. He did write a
he's
Disney
actually
thing.
he's moderately famous right now, more so than I am.
Well, he
My
wrote the
editor,
Kenobi book, right?
that's right, the Kenobi book. That's right, he wrote that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's a TV show down the line. So people are
Yeah, he wrote
pretty.
Iron Man for a while, and before Iron Man was a big deal, before the Marvel movies. But yeah, he did that and
Yep,
other stuff as well, Simpsons as well.
of course.
But he was my editorial director at Scry,
Yep.
and then my editor was Joyce Greenholt,
Hmm.
and then I think James Mitchell, who I talked about earlier,
Yep.
and various other freelancers. We all combined to knock out all 400 of those pieces.
Yeah.
Now, at the time, when I was working from home, I only did that. I only wrote those editorial stuff.
Yep.
So I think James might have been working in the office at the time.
Hmm.
2 years later, when we did the next one, I actually did have to contribute to actually like laying out the price guide stuff as well,
Wow.
which John said I was really good at. I'm
Yep.
really fast at doing a layout. So
Well, you
that was
said
something that
before
was
you were so
helpful.
good at spreadsheets, right?
Yeah, that's exactly basically what it was. So
Yep.
spreadsheets and doing Quark, search and replace to get Quark to get spreadsheets into a Quark file. Basically, I'm the master of that
Yep.
because I had to do that every issue for the. You should see what state the Scribe price guide was in before it got put into this nice thing with all the little check boxes
Yep.
and the little colored letters and the fonts perfectly where they
The
need to
key
be.
coded rarities and everything.
Yeah, that was about 2.5 days of work near the end of at the end of a magazine cycle. 2.5 days to get the price guide done. But I remember actually that it was that second one was like October through December. We worked on that
Yeah.
while also having to put up issues of the magazine. That was my least favorite time there.
Yep.
I hated that. It
Yeah.
was so nice to have actual Christmas break afterwards.
Yeah.
So
That's that must have been a very relaxing sort of break afterwards after putting together something
yeah.
like that where it's almost
Actually,
24 hours.
do you which one do you have? Do you have the black one or the white one?
The black one, the second edition.
Okay, so if you look in the early pages, the color pages where it
Hmm.
shows like putting cards into sleeves,
Yep.
if you can pick that out, that's my hand.
Oh no way! Well,
I
again, we'll take a
I
photo
was a
and post
hand
that
model very
below.
briefly.
That's
So if you
fantastic.
could
All
show
right,
that on your video, that'll be awesome.
that would be fantastic. Hang on, give me 1 second. I will find the card in the sleeve instructional. It's like you're a hand model. You should have pursued that career afterward.
That's what I should have done. I should have gone out of CCGs and done that.
Okay, so let's wrap up here. There's a couple of things I want to go through before we do. I like to ask our guests, do you think that there was a collectible game other than one that you worked on that you thought might have lasted longer that didn't?
Hmm. I guess if you want to count games I didn't work on, that would include the Lord of the Rings CCG
Yep.
because I didn't work on that. That was
Hmm.
after my Decipher time.
Yep.
But Decipher, at the time they needed a hit. So I remember someone saying that because that was when they were having the embezzlement issues with their chief financial officer.
Oh yeah, dark
Officer.
times. Do you have
Yeah.
any?
So
That was after you left, though, right?
yeah, that was after. Well, it was going on while I was there, but the details didn't come to light until after I left.
Mm-hmm.
I remember writing up there was a long, I don't know if it was what exactly it was, a legal document or whatever that Warren Holland wrote
Mm-hmm.
about Rick Edelman, the CFO, and all the stuff he did and so forth. I remember covering that for ICV2 like around 2008.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's when all that came to light.
Yeah. There was a.
But between them having some issues with funding there, and then some design decisions I guess they made really late in the game that were not that popular, then I remember it having a lot of issues. But that's a game I wish would have gone on longer.
Yeah, it was a very popular game, and obviously, again, it was one that was subject to the license, like the not only the license, but the idea that there was only so much footage, right?
Yeah, and it's also like what I said too about Fullmetal Alchemist. Like obviously, Lord of the Rings is a much bigger deal than a lot of other stuff, but it still had that time frame when it was really super popular, and that ended around when the third movie ended.
Yep.
After 05, 06 was when it started to really drain down, dwindle down a little bit. So it's a sort of thing. Unless you do have an evergreen thing like Magic, which obviously isn't based off any property,
Mm-hmm.
or Pokemon, which keeps putting stuff out,
Yep.
you're going to have kind of a tough time keeping in the business.
Keeping at pace, yeah.
Although I
Um,
wish they would have lasted now. I wish like Decipher then could have lasted until the Hobbit movies came out. That would have been a whole
mhm.
lot more additional stuff for them.
Yeah, yeah, that would have been fantastic to see actually the Smorg and stuff like that. I think they've got fan groups and stuff now starting to do fan made sets and everything like that. So that leads me to my first. We actually have a bunch of questions from the community that actually play some of the games that you started back then, and that actually leads me to
Oh,
the
good.
first
It'll be
one.
look. I got my Q shirt. I'm ready to answer
You
questions.
ready? It's very appropriate.
The Borg ship is not a ship.
Yeah, despite what it says on the card. Exactly. So, what I'm going to say is, what is your perspective on, as somebody who's made collectible games, what would your perspective be about fan driven sets for communities? Does it have your blessing? Say, if somebody wanted to make a Full Metal Alchemist or a 24 expansion set for fans?
Oh, sure, sure. I mean, obviously, first of all, it's not my property because
Yep.
either or I don't know if Funimation actually handle that or Universal or whoever
Viz
for
Media or whatever.
24.
Yep.
Between that and the company itself, I'm totally happy to see other people make creations at least vaguely based off my work.
Hmm.
In fact, I just want to say I have the spreadsheet for that FMA set that I never released.
Really?
I know I have the rules document I wrote. I gave that to somebody once a while back. I don't remember who that was. Maybe was it you?
Not the rules document. No. I'll take it though. I will. If you do find anything, I will make sure you email it to me. I'd love to take a look. Okay, so by all means, I don't think there's any sort of, obviously these are print and play sets. There's probably no illegal implications that these fans would have to be aware of. But obviously, as a designer, if anybody wants to make fan sets for 24, there's plenty of material. I think they ended up doing 8 seasons. And Full Metal Alchemist, whether they want to do Brotherhood or new cards, by all means, please do let Jason know. He would love to probably check them out. Okay, so the other community question I wanted to ask about, I don't know how much perspective you're going to have on it because you said you weren't really the Star Wars guy, but do you have any memories about objectives?
So those first came up, I believe, in the New Hope expansion, which was the expansion where you could figure out a way to blow up the Death Star,
Mm-hmm.
which had this ridiculously complex chain of things you had to do.
Yep.
But I think I might have been the first person to blow up the Death Star
Like in playtesting?
in in playtesting. Yeah, I remember us commenting on that. How I was the first.
Wow.
That or I was the first person to blow up Yavin. I don't remember which it was.
Well, I
But yeah,
mean,
it was just
one's good and one's confusing if you wanted to blow up
you
Yarving,
know,
but
well, they were both confusing, but
yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's part of the reason why I got out of Decipher's card game specifically because, but like I talked about the Borg and just the level of complexity they introduced. It's like you just can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
You couldn't really do it back then, but we did it anyway because that's just how we thought CCGs were. But again, then along comes something like Pokemon, which shows, hey, you can make a really simple CCG and people will still love it. So
Yeah, yeah. Well,
that's
that was
still a
the
battle
key.
that I think developers fight not only in CCGs but in video games, like the whole casual versus hardcore kind of thing. And in general, casual does do a lot better. Or at the very least, people aren't going to understand your game as well as you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a rule for any game developer.
Yeah, absolutely. They don't have the 2.5 years that you've spent putting through it. So a half move, a hard left turn isn't going to make as much sense. Yeah. Okay. So that was the objective. So the other thing I do want to ask about is there any games you were obviously reporting on collectible games around that time, as we spoke about, where Pokemon had inspired a deluge of collectible games around about 2003, 2004, 2005. Was there any games that you had heard about that you were particularly excited about that never saw the light of day? Famous examples include like Chronicles of Amber and stuff like that. Was there any that you specifically heard about as an insider that you were like, hey, I want to check that out, and then it never got to market?
I don't really recall anything so much because I think for as quickly as we worked at SCRYE, I just paid attention to the stuff that existed.
Yep.
I didn't have the bandwidth to think about the stuff that wasn't actually going to come out.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't really recall I had enough to keep track of. I didn't recall really wanting something else so much.
There was enough eggs in the basket. You didn't want it to overflow it.
Yeah. Again, kind of like it is today. I've got 8,000 games on Steam. I need to play half of them. So it's like, I don't need more.
Oh, isn't that the problem with today? A definitely embarrassment of riches for games and
Yeah.
TV shows and movies and everything like that.
One thing I do remember when after I left SCRYE and I was freelancing for them, we did cover a few other like non-collectible games a bit, and including an Inuyasha PlayStation 2 game.
Mm.
And I can remember getting a copy of that,
Yeah.
like from the developer, and I was like, "Wow, I got a free PlayStation game, awesome!" And now, like,
Well, again,
you
perks.
can get Alan Wake for free. It's like, wow, who cares?
Little did you know that you would get a lifetime subscription a little bit later on, thanks to a job.
Well, not that, but just but everybody gets everything free now. Everything
Yep.
goes free
Absolutely.
somewhere. Yeah.
Okay, so that basically wraps up community questions. I want to thank Greg Ferrioli, Travis Morton, Aaron F, and Andrew Vayu for submitting some of those questions. The last thing we usually do before the end of these podcasts is we like to play Kraken questions. And if the video is recording correctly, the people will see me holding up 3 individual booster packs of questions, though you may not be seeing them if you're having trouble with the video. So we have 3 colors here, yellow, red, or blue. Which of those colors do you want to answer questions from? Okay, so blue. So if the video is playing, you will see me cracking it on screen right now and opening sealed cards that I've never checked and seeing what random questions you're going to get asked, Jason. Let's find out. Okay, so we got 3 common questions, which are going to be silly, crazy questions that probably have nothing to do with anything, and then 1 rare question that might be a little bit more thought-provoking. So, with Kraken questions right now, our first common question is, what is your personal favorite genre of tabletop gaming?
I think just I played a lot of just the general, all the regular German board games. Just anything. Basically, it's better if it's from Germany.
Yeah,
Basically,
Eurogames? Let's say Eurogames.
yeah, Eurogames. We'll go with that. In fact, I should mention we during lunch hours at Decipher for a while, we actually played. We had like a Formula Day league.
Oh,
We actually
really?
kept track of standings and so forth, and scored it and so on. Yeah,
That was a huge
we'd have
game
like
back
about
in the
10 or
day.
12 people playing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
We have 10 or
amazing.
12 people playing it and keep scores and have a season or whatever. So, yeah.
There you go. Racing in the office. I love it. Okay, so another common question. I think I've had this one before. What is the nerdiest thing you own?
Oh God. Nerdiest thing I own. How about this?
He's holding up a Minecraft TNT creeper.
Yep. Well, they're separate, but it's.
Oh right, there you go. That's a
Yes.
pretty nerdy thing to have. There's not too many 47-year-olds who are going to crack out the Minecraft collectibles.
Yeah. I've actually let me point this out too.
Yeah.
Just because I'm always proud of this.
Yep.
This is a little statuette my significant other made of our Guild Wars 2 characters.
Oh, adorable.
So yeah, it's really cute.
I really hope
My
this video
thief
works so
and
people can
thief and
see how
Necro.
adorable that is. That is was that Valentine's Day or a birthday or something?
No, just a random thing they did.
It's adorable. It's like a Hummel figure. I love it.
It's a little dusty though.
Yeah.
Dusty.
It's adorable. All right, last common question. What do you prefer, chess or poker?
God, I remember when poker was a big deal. I actually got into a few, like, I actually went to Vegas and played some when we were there for, like, various
Really?
shows
Like
and so
at
forth.
like WPT?
No, 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 not like big things, just at the regular tables for, like,
Oh,
$2 or
right.
whatever.
Yep, yep, yep.
Although one of our guys, one of our designers, Joe Allred, who worked for Decipher for a while, he actually did play
Yeah.
in the World
He
Poker
was
Championship.
a
He was
big
really
Star Wars
good.
player.
Yeah, yeah, he played in the World Poker Tournament.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
um,
Fantastic.
but but yeah, I played a decent amount. I was not very good. I probably lost money. Back in the long, long days ago, like in high school, I remember playing chess,
Mm-hmm.
but I probably haven't played that in about 30 years. So,
Yeah.
like I said, and we had occasional, like, I remember we actually had a poker tournaments at Matt Mariani's house. We'd play there too. So get about half a dozen people or so to play there on some evenings. So definitely,
Well,
I'd say lean more towards poker. Okay.
the last rare question is: which is there any unrealized project from your career that you were disappointed didn't happen?
So when Press Pass was winding down,
Mm-hmm.
we thought about when we were winding down the Fullmetal Alchemist stuff. There was some exploration and doing some other kinds of games like non CCGs,
Mm-hmm.
and I actually did pitch a card game. Don't want to get into too many details of it because I think it's people are going to steal it and take my copyright or whatever. But it was a fun little kind of party game.
Yeah.
Played it around the office. Played it with the people in our group. Actually took it to the local game store where we did some stuff, and everyone did seem to like it. Thought it was a lot of fun, but it never got made. And I'm still kind of sad that never saw the light of day. I have actually now seen a card game out there that kind
Mm.
of resembles it, so I might have missed the boat on that
Did
one.
you want to share what that
So
was?
I honestly do not recall what the name of it is right now, but I
Right.
saw it
Right.
at a
Did you?
convention. I saw it at a convention like 5 years ago or something. So it's
Did
something where they have like I don't remember how. I can't really describe it properly, but yeah, it's someday maybe someday I'll get back to that.
Did you have a name for it yourself, or like a working title?
Yes, it was called Who'd Win.
What was it called? Sorry.
Who'd Win? Although I think I spelled it WHOODWIN, one word.
Right. Wow. Okay. Who'd win? Okay, as in who would win the game?
Yeah, who would win the little contest in the that we've set up.
Oh, right. That's similar to there's like a superhero like
That's it, the superhero
the
game. Yep,
superhero
yep.
game that's like a little bit like that, where it's
Super
like
Clash, I think it's called.
Super Flash or something.
Super
Yeah,
Clash, I
yeah.
think. Yep,
Yeah, I've seen
that's
that around.
exactly
That
what
was
I'm
like
thinking of.
a Cards Against Humanity, but like who would win, Robin Hood or Captain Nemo?
Yep, yep,
Wow, that could have been
that's it.
you.
Could have been me.
Oh, wow. Well, okay. That brings us to the end of the episode. Now, before we go, I just wanted to say now, Jason, you are still very active in the MMO world. Do you want to tell us where people can find you?
Sure, I do most of my writing over at mmobomb.com.
Mm
That's where we cover free to play games all the time. I do writing, we do podcasts, we have all sorts of other stuff there.
hmm. Mm hmm.
We also stream occasionally, streaming at twitch.tv/mmobomb. I stream at twitch.tv/jasonwinter.
Mm hmm.
So you can check me out there from time to time.
Mm hmm.
And we also have another site, sort of side that the MMO Bomb pays the bills on. This another side thing we do is Ready Check Radio.
Okay.
That's RAIDEO.
Mm hmm.
Find that on Twitter at RC Radio.
Mm hmm.
And we stream at twitch.tv/Ready Check Radio.
Awesome. And
So
if anybody wants to comment on anything from this video, obviously they can comment on the YouTube if a video comes out. If not, hit Jason up on Twitter. What was your handle, Jason?
Winter Informal. Thanks. I totally forgot that one.
Well, hit Jason up again. If you're seeing this on video, comment below or hit Jason up or myself at CCGHistory. Thank you so much for joining me. It has been amazing to hear some of these behind the scenes stories that have
Thank
just
you.
always pondered my mind of how did this come about? How did that come about? I so much appreciate you coming on the show today.
Great. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
It definitely was. All right, so that'll be that. I will say goodbye. You'll probably see my hand wave in about 6 minutes. So I'm going to sign off. Goodbye, everybody. So that's the end of the episode. Thanks so much for sticking with it. Remember, we always want your feedback here at the Booster Pack, so you can hit us up either in the comments below or on Facebook or Twitter at CCGHistory. Next episode, I'm very excited to announce that we have a sequel to our pilot episode. We have John Zenza returning to talk more about the history of AEG and the CCGs that they made during the 90s. I'm so much looking forward to it. Also, in those places I just mentioned before, the Facebook, Twitter, or in the comments, let us know what other card games you want to hear about on this show, because we would love to bring you some interesting stories from the designers, artists, players that actually used to play them. So let us know anytime, and we will add it to the list of things we want to do. Also, you sort of saw an episode of Cracking Questions where we take 3 silly questions and 1 serious game-related question, put them in a booster pack, and randomize it. And one day we'll ask it to our guest. If you have a silly question you want to ask a guest, or a serious one, post it in the comments below, or again on Facebook, on Twitter, at CCGHistory, and we might include it in a future episode. All right, that's it for us. Thank you for sticking with this technical difficulties wrapped up episode. If I gave these episodes silly titles, it would be called Jason Winter and the Frozen Man. But obviously, I'm just going to stick with his name. So that's it from me. Thanks again. Goodbye. I'll catch you for the next episode with John Zinzer.